we go. I'm welcoming Teacher Shannon here with us. So welcome. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone. My name is Teacher Shannon. I work for the Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation, and I am excited to join so we can talk about force, motion, energy, and Jamestown. So just a few things to introduce myself and my museum. The Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation is actually two different museums. We have Jamestown Settlement and the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown near Williamsburg, Virginia. We have amazing galleries and interactives, but I have to say that probably my favorite part of both museums is we have living history sites, a recreated Powhatan, James Fort, and the three ships that would have come over from England to Virginia. And then at our other museum, we have an 18th century army encampment and a Revolutionary era farm. So you get to actually touch some of the artifacts that you see indoors when you visit outside because everything is a copy, it's a reproduction. And at our museum, our goal is to talk about the meeting of three different cultures. So the American Indians, the Europeans, and Africans. We talk about how they met and also what they have given to us, why it's so important, and why we study it even 400 years later. Now, during this program, we get to look for different scientific concepts like force, motion, and energy. And we're going to do that by examining a primary source. And normally we would compare Powhatan and African weaponry to what the English are using. But this time we are going to be focusing just on the Powhatan people for Native American History Month. So we're going to focus and look at the Powhatan bow and arrow, figure out how it works. We are going to do a little bit of a scientific investigation, and then we're going to answer the question, why is it so important to look at past technology? So as we go through, I'll ask a lot of questions. You can put your answers in chat and also ask questions there as well. I noticed one question already. Norfolk, Virginia is probably about an hour to an hour and a half away from Williamsburg, depending on what traffic looks like. So let's get started by looking at a primary source. So this one is called Their Manner of Catching Fish in Virginia by someone named Theodore de Bry, who actually copied someone else's work named John White. And this gives us a lot of great information about the Powhatan people and one of their main jobs. But I want us to look closely for examples of science in action. So do you see any examples of simple machines, energy, motion in this picture? And can you point them out using the chat? The boat is moving, right? So that's a great example of motion. And you have to use the oars to push and pull to row the boat. And also when you're rowing the boat and you're moving the boat, you're doing work. And your boat's probably going to have a little bit of speed. The fish are moving. So they're doing work. All of the people and things are going to be taking up mass. They're taking up space. The waves in the water are another good example of motion and speed and action. Yeah, the spear fishing that we see in the back of the picture. If we look at how someone is holding that spear above their head, that is an example of energy, like potential energy. So I think this is just such a great example about how science is all around us. We don't normally take the time in our everyday lives to stop and think about how much science is happening. But that's true today, and it's true 400 years ago. And one of the reasons why science is so important, science, technology, engineering, and math, is because they can help make our life easier. That's why people make tools or technology. So here is probably an example of some cutting edge technology for the Powhatan people 400 years ago. How would it make life easier for the Powhatan people? What job do you think this can do? It's an axe. So we know what it is. Ooh, I see lots of great answers. It's for cutting down trees. Maybe the Powhatan people could use it for hunting. So it could break things. And if we take a close look, how does this help with cutting? Because that seemed to be an answer I saw a lot. I want to switch to my other camera so we can get a close-up look at this. How can we tell that it's for cutting? It's got a blade. How do we know that the blade is sharp? Or how do you think the Powhatan people would have sharpened this blade? Rubbing another stone against it, maybe with a knife or another rock, because it's got the angles and curves. It's got a very thin edge if we look at it, and we can tell it's been sharpened because this edge is not smooth, it's jagged, it's zigzaggy. So someone hit this with another rock in a process called flint knapping. And that's one of the ways the Powhatan could make these tools super sharp. So this is just one example of a tool the Powhatan make to make their lives a little bit easier. But I said one of the big things we're going to look at is the bow and arrow. So that is one of the main tools the Powhatan people use for hunting and for fighting. And we've got another primary source picture, so one from 400 years ago, done by the same people as the other one. Done by Theodore de Bry, who copied it after John White. But what can this tell us about the bow and arrow? Let's take a closer look at that tool. It's tall. So the Powhatan people, mainly the Powhatan men, that was one of their main jobs, they are using something called a long tool. So it's very, very tall as the people, as tall as I am. Yeah, so we know it's a tall bow, but if we want to get some more clues about what natural resources, what materials the Powhatan people could use to make these, we might want to look a little bit closer at this. So what materials would the Powhatan people have to find to make this? We've definitely got wood and we've got string. Ooh, sinew. Hmm, I don't know if everyone knows what sinew is, but the good thing is sinew, which comes from animal, that's something we can find in our bodies. So if you put one arm out and take some fingers from your other hand and put them on the inside of your elbow and press down just a little bit, when you bend your straight arm, you should feel something that gets tight when you pull your arm up and relaxes when you put your arm down. That is our tendon. It's what helps hold our muscle to our bone. It's what lets us move around. And that tendon, or sometimes called sinew, when you turn it into string, the Powhatan people could find that in deer, hit it with a rock, and it's going to become much more string-like. So that's perfect for the bow. Whew. So now we know what one part's made out of. We should probably take a look at the arrow though, because we've got a few new materials on this. So what resources do we see on the arrow? We've got feathers. We've got something that maybe kind of looks like bone, or reed, or wood, or bamboo. So we've got lots of ideas. So it's kind of got that brownish color, just like wood, except it's super smooth. And if I turn it, it's got a hole in the middle. And the closest that we're used to seeing is bamboo. But this is reed. It's a plant that the Powhatan people could find along the water here in Virginia. Why do you think the Powhatan people would want a hollow plant for their arrow? Why not just use a stick? Sticks are probably easier to find. Ooh, so it goes faster. It's lighter. A stick is too heavy. Yeah, if it's lighter, it's going to move faster. It's going to soar through the air easier. That's also why you have the feathers. It's more aerodynamic. It's thinner, this reed. And this is kind of wavy, whereas a reed, you could actually heat up just a little bit and straighten it out, which is also going to make this more aerodynamic. And I see another great answer. We could stick our blade in the hole, which means you could pick and choose, and you could make different size arrowheads depending on what you're hunting, and you can just fit those in really easily. Or if it breaks, you don't break your whole arrow, you might just break part of it. But let's take a closer look at those arrowheads. So what do you think the Powhatan people could use to make those? Ooh, teeth, animal teeth, or stone, sharp rocks, crystals, bones, obsidian. We've got more of reed and stone and rocks and bone. Want to make sure I read everyone's answers. Wood, see teeth again. Flint, so a type of stone. So at the bottom of our arrowheads, we do have wood. And then to hold the sharp points on, we've got some of that animal string, that sinew. And then this one over here is stone. And this one comes from an animal. If I put my pinky next to it, it's almost the size of my pinky. Are there many animals that you can find in North America that have teeth as big as someone's pinky? There's probably a few, but I'm not sure you could find animals with teeth that big in Virginia, or at least not without it being a very dangerous animal. I see lots of you lip-staying predators. So rather than using teeth, the Powhatan people are going to likely use bone. So they could take something like a leg bone from the deer and they could sand this down, they could cut it into the arrowhead that we see right here. So this one's actually deer bone. So, but bone, stone, antler, even the claws, the talons of birds, all of those will work to make arrowheads. So now we just have to complete our bow and arrow. So I've got to put my pieces together. I've got my arrowhead and my arrow shaft. Raha, there we go. And then I've got the bow. And well, actually, how does a bow and arrow work? How do I put these two things together? Maybe if you pretend to have an invisible bow and arrow, I think that helps because it's kind of hard to describe with words. But Stacy has done a great job putting it in words for us. You put the string in the crack and then you pull everything tight. And there actually is a little divot, a crack at the end of our arrow. I'll try and turn this so we can see it. It's very small. It's this tiny, tiny, tiny triangle cut that's at the end. And we can put the string on this, and then I can pull the arrow and the string back at the same time. So when I pull this back and I hold it, I now have something called potential energy. All my energy is stored and saved, but nothing's happening just yet. What happens if I pull my string and my arrow back even farther? How much potential energy do I have now? I have more. So when I let go, all of this potential energy is going to change into something called kinetic energy. And that's the energy you get when something is moving. So more potential energy means more kinetic energy. And also, when I pull back super far, what else happens when I let go? Why would the Powhatan people want to pull back super far on their bow? Ooh, great ideas. It will go farther. It will go faster because it's got more of that energy. So I can't actually fire this in my studio though without getting in a lot of trouble. So instead, I have a video of my coworker and he can show us how this works. So let me pull that up for you. We're going to go to the next slide in this. Here we go. So I want you to both look and I want you to listen. We want to use our senses. Oops, I just clicked the wrong thing. Don't you hate when that happens? Let's try this one more time. Look and listen, use our senses for what happens when you fire this tool. So what are some things that you noticed with your senses? Things that you saw or things that you heard when Russell was firing that bow and arrow? Yeah, it's got like this hitting sound. It's got a clank when it hits something. And it goes far and fast when it lets go. Did you hear a sound when Russell let go? Ooh, yeah, it makes like a thwish, like a sound to it when you let go, just from the bow. So that is something called qualitative data. It's things that we've noticed with our senses. But if we want to be a scientist, we also want quantitative data. That means we want numbers when we're looking at something. So besides just seeing Russell fire the bow and arrow, we also want to get some numbers with that. I want to know how fast that bow and arrow is actually going. So what we can do is if you have a spare piece of paper, we are going to do a trial where we're going to go 3 times and we're going to do a speed test. We're going to make a graph so we can record our answers. We're going to have 3 trials because we need lots of data to make sure that our numbers are correct. So trial 1, 2, and 3. And this is where we can record the numbers that we get. So now let's get some numbers to go with all of the things that you noticed. So let's go back to Russell, but this time he's got a machine that's going to help get the numbers for us. So we need to go to the next video. Not this one again, Russell. The next one. Let me move some stuff out of the way. There we go. All right, so those are all the numbers for how fast the arrow is going. And I've got it, we don't need to watch you again, Russell. I've got it in a chart right here. And great question, what is FPS? FPS is feet per second. So this is some great data right here. But one of the things we want to do if we are trying to get these numbers is we want to kind of figure out what the average is. So about how fast were all 3 of these trials that we just did. So we can get that by adding these numbers together and then dividing them by 3. So that's our next step. And it looks like some people have already done the math for us. Some of you are very, very quick. So let's see if we're right. There we go. We got a correction. And it looks like Debbie got the right answer in the chat after fixing it. But yes, 114 feet per second. Now, I don't know about any of you. I don't think about things in feet per second. It's not something I use a lot today. So instead, we're going to slide this out of the way. And let's change it over into miles per hour. So the average speed of this arrow in miles per hour was 77.7. Can you think of anything today that goes right around 70 or 75 miles per hour? A car. So the bow and arrow, when the Powhatan people fired it, was going about the speed of a car on the interstate or on the freeway. That is super fast. But why is it so important for us to look at past technologies? Why is it important for us to know how the Powhatan bow and arrow worked? It can help us now, right? Sometimes when we look at past technologies, we can improve them today. So we can learn how things worked and discover new things about the past. So we can learn from it, so people can make changes. Yeah, and it even tells us about people and why they made things the way they did. So there's a lot of information we can get by looking at past technology. Great answers, everyone. So these are all of my questions for you. Do you have any questions that you want to ask me? I'll give you a couple moments to type those answers into the chat. And while you're doing that, I want to share some things that we're doing at our museum. So we've got lots of different programs. If you want to learn more about Jamestown or the American Revolution or about the Powhatan people, We also have a special virtual program every month, our homeschool history seminars, where we've got lots of cool topics that we're covering every month. So our next one is actually coming up later today. We're going to talk about cooking. And lastly, if you are nearby in Virginia, or if you're maybe planning a trip for the holidays, we've got lots of cool things that are happening at our museum too. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to answer your questions. So I see, can there be multiple tips on an arrow? Maybe. Probably not on this arrow though, because we've only got the one hole. Only one tip really fits here. Let's see, and I know I've got some other questions too, so I want to make sure I get to those. Are spears like arrows? I like to think of the spear as kind of like a super ginormous arrow. If you give me a moment. I've got a spear. It is basically a super ginormous arrow. It works a lot of the same ways, but the spear does have multiple points on it. All right, let's see what else we've got. Spears like arrows. Have I ever made bows and arrows? Not personally, but we're very lucky. One of my coworkers makes these things for us. So sometimes the arrows do use flint or quartzite, are very common stones for them to use. Do the Powhatans use the adolite? I don't know. That might be something for me to research. I don't know if you would want to shoot multiple arrows at once, but if you noticed how quickly Russell was firing in that video, an experienced person could probably fire a new arrow about every 6 seconds. So in a minute, then, a Powhatan hunter was probably shooting about 10 arrows. So that is a lot. What did the Powhatan people hunt? Let me put some stuff down. So the Powhatan people are going to hunt all sorts of animals that live here in Virginia. The most common one, though, is the white-tailed deer with its white tail, because the Powhatan people could use the deer for food. They're going to use the bone for tools, and they can even use the skin to make clothing. So Powhatan people have been living in Virginia for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And there are still Powhatan people who live in Virginia today, like the great, 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 great grandchildren. There are actually 7 different tribes here in Virginia that can trace themselves back to the Powhatan people that were living here before Europeans came. So groups like the Pamunkey, the Mattaponi, and the Chickahominy are considered Powhatan people. What other weapons did they use? Spears, bows and arrows, and tomahawks are some of the ones that come to mind right away. How sharp could the arrow be? So, I put the rock right here. Rock can actually be sharper than surgical steel if you cut it right. So these could be ridiculously sharp. Did animals get hunted to use their teeth for arrow? Probably not only for the arrow. It was really important for a lot of Powhatan people to respect nature and to try to use as much of the animal as possible, but they would hunt the animals for specifically what they needed. So sometimes they would hunt the animal just for the skin because they needed clothes, or sometimes they might just hunt the animal for food because it was winter and they needed to stockpile more. What is my favorite artifact I have here? I don't know. I mean, there's so many great ones. I have to say, I really do like looking at the axes because the museum gave me a bunch of them. I actually have 4 in my studio. And I think it's just so cool because it's something everyday people used. When did they live? So we've been talking about how Powhatan people lived around 400 years ago before the time of Jamestown. So before the English came over on their ships and they built the first permanent English settlement here in Virginia. Can you reuse the animals after you hunt an animal with it? Yes, that's actually one of the reasons why the Powhatan people would make their arrow in 2 parts. So even if an animal runs off, maybe you didn't hit it hard enough and the arrow gets stuck in the animal, this long part is going to get knocked out and you can reuse the arrow shaft. All right, I've got time for one more question. I'm sorry I can't answer all of them. They're all so amazing and you have so many. I'm going to answer how young were they when they first started hunting? So we have some writings that say that the Powhatan people would start as really young boys, and it was actually their mothers who would teach them how to hunt. So even though women weren't always going out and hunting, they had the skills enough to teach their sons.
Oh,
I
you have
don't have
so many good questions. And I just want to say, I know you said you were going to answer one more. And I also know you're on a deadline. So we are going to have to end this. But I want to just say we've got some thank yous, and this was so cool. And I just have to say that I am so like amazed at how fast an arrow can go at 77 miles an hour. That's incredible. We got to thank you. We love this. And then I just want to put in the chat here that we appreciate learning along with you today. And you can schedule your own visit with Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation to explore more about force, motion, energy, and all of the things that are living science that teacher Shannon talked about. We've got the link in the chat, and we will be back again tomorrow. I'm putting in the chat for that too. And so we've got registration to join us with the Fort Monroe Authority to learn more about the indigenous peoples that first controlled the land we now call Fort Monroe. And there's a link in there for registering. Anything else, Teacher Shannon, before we get going?
Nope, that's it. I know someone asked for the QR code again. I just put in our website.
Oh,
So
excellent.
that's got information for our events, our programming, and everything like that. But thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.